It's Tuesday, 6:47 a.m. In Austin, the air is already warm. You're standing barefoot on a wood floor, coffee in hand, watching the sun crawl over a skyline that didn't exist 10 years ago. Somewhere between your first sip and your second, a notification hits your phone. A deposit. Small, quiet, it doesn't ask permission, it just arrives. 2,000 miles away in Los Angeles, another version of you is doing the exact same thing. Same coffee, same ritual, same notification, same dollar amount of dividends landing in a brokerage account before either of you has said a single word out loud. Here's the problem. One of these two people is going to keep almost all of that money. The other one is about to lose a chunk of it before it even finishes landing. And the state you live in, not the amount you invest, might be the single most expensive decision you never thought to calculate. Let's start with the number nobody puts in the thumbnail. Texas charges 0% state income tax. Not a low rate, zero, nothing. Your dividends, your capital gains, your paycheck. The state of Texas doesn't touch any of it. California charges up to 13.3% on that same income once you cross into the state's highest bracket. That's the highest state income tax rate in the entire country, and dividends don't get a special exemption. To California, a dividend check looks exactly like a paycheck. It's ordinary income, taxed like everything else. Now, play that forward. Say your dividend portfolio is throwing off $60,000 a year, enough to actually live on. In Texas, you keep the full $60,000 before federal tax. In California, depending on your bracket, you could be handing over several $1,000s a year to Sacramento for the exact same portfolio, doing the exact same job. That's not a rounding error. That's a car payment, a semester of tuition, an entire vacation gone every single year just for choosing the wrong zip code. And that gap doesn't happen once. It compounds. Every year you don't pay it in Texas is a year that money stays invested instead. But before you pack a U-Haul to Austin, here's the twist. Taxes are only half the equation. The other half is what it actually costs to live there in the first place. Using cost of living benchmarks modeled on the MIT Living Wage Framework and Bureau of Labor Statistics consumer data, here's what an annual budget looks like at 3 different lifestyles in both cities. Modest/basic, covering rent, food, transportation, insurance, no extras. Austin, roughly $42,000 a year. Los Angeles, roughly $58,000 a year. Comfortable, a nicer apartment, some savings, occasional travel, a real cushion. Austin, roughly $65,000 a year. Los Angeles, roughly $92,000 a year. Luxury/high-end, the version of financial freedom people actually picture when they dream about this. Austin, roughly $110,000 a year. Los Angeles, roughly $165,000 a year. Notice what just happened. California isn't just taxing your income harder. It's demanding almost 50% more of it just to fund an identical lifestyle. The tax gap and the cost of living gap aren't separate problems. They stack. Now here's where it gets real. How much capital do you actually need invested to generate each of those lifestyles, purely from dividends? We'll use a conservative, realistic dividend yield range, 3.5% to 4%, based on a balanced U.S. dividend portfolio, not a high-yield gamble, a sustainable one. At a 3.75% blended yield, here's the capital required. Modest lifestyle. Austin, $42K per year, roughly $1.12 million invested. Los Angeles, $58K per year, roughly $1.55 million invested. Comfortable lifestyle. Austin, $65K per year, roughly $1.73 million invested. Los Angeles, $92K per year, roughly $2.45 million invested. Luxury lifestyle. Austin, $110K per year, roughly $2.93 million invested. Los Angeles, $165K per year, roughly $4.4 million invested. Read that last line again. To fund the exact same luxury lifestyle, California doesn't just ask for a little more, it asks for $1.5 million more sitting in your portfolio before you ever collect the dividend check. That's not a tax bracket, that's an entire second retirement account you'd need to build from scratch just to live in a different city. So how does an ordinary person actually reach $1 million plus portfolio? Not with a lottery ticket, with a boring, repeatable habit called dollar cost averaging. Let's run the math on consistent monthly investing at a total return of 8 to 10% a year, dividends plus growth combined, which is realistic for a diversified US equity portfolio held over decades. Investing $1,000 a month at a 9% average annual return crosses $1 million in just under 26 years. Push that to $1,500 a month, and you cross $1 million in about 22 years, and you reach $1.7 million, the Austin comfortable target, in roughly 26 years. That's not overnight wealth. That's a 25-year-old becoming financially free before turning 50, or a 40-year-old getting there before 65, right on schedule with room to spare. The number isn't the hard part, the consistency is. Every single month, mark it up or mark it down, the deposit goes in. That's the entire strategy. Here's where most people leave money on the table without realizing it. The account you use matters almost as much as what you buy inside it. A Roth IRA is the closest thing to a cheat code that US tax code offers. You contribute after-tax dollars now, and in exchange, every dollar of growth and every dollar you withdraw in retirement is completely tax-free. No dividend tax, no capital gains tax, not in Texas, not even in California. The catch is the contribution limit. Roth IRAs only let you put in a few $1,000s a year, so for most people building a multi-million-dollar dividend portfolio, the Roth is the first stop, not the whole trip. That's where a taxable brokerage account comes in. No contribution limits, full flexibility, and this is where your state of residence starts mattering enormously, because dividends and gains in a taxable account are exactly what gets hit by California's top bracket, and exactly what a Texas resident pays $0 in state tax on. Max the Roth first, build the rest in a taxable account, and understand that the state printed on your driver's license quietly decides how much of that taxable growth you actually get to keep. Now, somewhere in your research, you're going to find a stock or a fund promising 10%, 12%, even 15% dividend yields, and it's going to be tempting because it looks like a shortcut past everything we just calculated. It's not a shortcut, it's a trap. A yield that high is usually the market screaming a warning. Either the underlying business is deteriorating and the stock price has collapsed, which mathematically inflates the yield percentage, or the company is paying out more than it actually earns, borrowing from tomorrow to look good today. Sooner or later, that dividend gets cut, and when it does, you lose the income and the principal at the same time. The companies that actually build million-dollar portfolios are boring. Dividend Aristocrats, companies that have raised their payout for 25 consecutive years or more, rarely headline a top 10 highest yields list. They're utilities, consumer staples, healthcare giants, the kind of businesses nobody brags about at a dinner party. Boring is the point. Boring is what survives a recession. Boring is what's still paying you in year 30. You don't need 40 stocks and a spreadsheet obsession to execute any of this. You need 2 ETFs. SCHD, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, it screens specifically for companies with a sustained history of dividend growth and strong free cash flow, which filters out most of the yield traps before they ever reach your portfolio. VOO, or VYM, either the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF for broad market growth or the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF for more income tilt, depending on whether you want growth-heavy or income-heavy exposure. Blend the two and you get a portfolio that captures rising dividend income from SCHD and long-term market growth from VOO without picking a single individual stock or guessing which company survives the next decade. This is the entire engine behind every number we calculated earlier. 2 tickers, decades of consistency, no complexity required. One more layer most people never think about: timing. Most individual dividend stocks pay quarterly, but not on the same schedule. Stagger a handful of dividend payers and blend in SCHD, which pays quarterly, and you can engineer a portfolio that deposits cash into your account nearly every single month of the year instead of 4 random lump sums. That's the difference between I get a dividend check 4 times a year and money shows up in my account almost like a paycheck. Except nobody's clocking your hours and nobody can lay you off. Every number in this video assumes one more thing you have full control over: DRIP, dividend reinvestment. Every dollar that lands in your account before financial independence gets plowed straight back into more shares. That's what turns a 22-year timeline into reality instead of theory. And don't ignore inflation. $1 in 25 years won't buy what it buys today, which is exactly why the comfortable and luxury targets matter more than the modest one. They build in room to breathe as prices rise. Texas gets you there faster because the state gets out of your way. California makes you fight for every dollar, in tax and in rent, before you ever see it. Neither one is wrong, but now you know the actual price tag of the choice. If this broke down the math you've been avoiding, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Which state should we run next? Florida, New York, or somewhere nobody's expecting?